So what are the questions that I get asked the most when I'm out doing lawn care for people? I spray yards, do weed control and fertilization. And I came up with 7 questions and wanted to give you the raw video footage here of me talking about these 7 questions because these I get asked a lot. So number 1 question I get asked, maybe not in particular order, but the question I get asked is, hey, do I need to water this application in? So I'm hoping this video will be helpful for you, whether you're doing weed control and fertilization for a business, or maybe you're a homeowner and you want to know my answers to these common questions. Here's what I tell my customers. Well, a lot of times the application does need to be watered in, but it's usually not a hurry. So for instance, let's just say I'm spraying prodiamine, which is a pre-emergent application. I've got a post-emergent mixed in there with it, which is what I'm spraying right now. The pre-emergent does need to be watered in, but it's usually not like something that has to happen right away. I mean, I think if it's a week or 2 later, it's typically fine. So usually what I'll do, I'll put a note on the invoice and I'll say, hey, you know, this application does need to be watered in. It's not urgent. If we've not received rain within a week, then please water your grass for 20 to 30 minutes or so. Now, it probably don't need water that long, honestly. I don't know that all the customers are going to do that. Probably most of them don't even read the note. And in my mind, if it was 3 weeks later and it rained, it would probably still be fine. But it's better to put that on there and let the customer know that, yes, it would be helpful to water in. Now, what about the fertilizer? The fertilizer, I try to explain, do I need to water this in? I put fertilizer in the yard. And I said, well, the fertilizer is not going to do anything until it gets water. I mean, it's basically just going to sit there. But again, it's not urgent to water. I'm using a slow release fertilizer a lot of times, a polymer coated fertilizer. So if it's not like it's going to burn the grass is what I tried to explain to them, because I think sometimes that's their concern. But I said, but you know, it does need water, so I would recommend water. And again, I'm going to use my invoice and put a note on the invoice. I don't handwrite the note. It's just a pre-published note from the software there that tells them that yes, it would be good to water, and I give them some recommended watering patterns. So that's my question. Do I need to water it? The answer is yes, but it's not like you got to run out there and turn the irrigation on right away. I want to mention the, while I got you before I move number 2, the 2024 Lawn Care Life Conference coming up February 23rd and 24th. After the video, go to lawncarelife.com and there's a link that says conference. We got a lot of speakers coming. It's a Friday night, Saturday event, and use the code 2024. If you hadn't signed up, use the promo code 2024. It'll save you 10%. And if you have more than one person, it'll also save you 10% just by putting 2 or more people in when you register. lawncarelife.com, and you'll click on the conference link to see the details and register. Number 2, the question I get asked, I'll get somebody that'll say, hey, a lot of times it's coming a text message. They'll say, hey, Jason, you sprayed my yard today and now it rained. Did it wash it all away? Is basically what they're getting to. The way I try to answer this is again, if I can answer the question before they ask it, that's helpful. So usually when I'm talking to people, I'll say, listen, most of these herbicides are very effective quickly. So some of them are going to work through the soil, some of them are going to work through the leaves, some of them, like the pre-emergents, definitely need to be watered in. So if it's a pre-emergent and it rains, that's actually great. If it's a post-emergent that is systemic and maybe it's taking it through the roots, the rain probably helped that as well. Now, I'm not looking for a big-time flood coming through. I don't think that's ideal. But if it's a post-emergent that sticks to the leaves and is going to be taking it through the leaves, then typically within an hour or 2, it is very effective. Now, the label on the different products are going to probably tell you how long it needs to be before it's watered in or before it gets rain, but a lot of them are very, very effective. Just to give an example, I did a video one time where I sprayed glyphosate, which is an ingredient found in Roundup, on a weed, and purposely washed it off with a hose. And I did different intervals, like 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, and 30 seconds. You know, and there was a noticeable difference, but even the 30-second one had a decent effect on the plant. The herbicides are taken in very quickly through the leaves of the plant. Third question I get asked a lot, people say, hey, I've got dogs. When can I let my dogs back out? Again, the label is going to be helpful in many of these questions, but a lot of them, as far as your re-entry interval, is going to be when the product is thoroughly dry. So in the summertime in Alabama where I live, I mean, that's typically 15 to 20 minutes. It goes from spraying something to dry. But again, you want to err on the side of caution. It typically revolves around when the product has dried, and I'll tell them to use caution up until that point. Fourth thing I get asked a lot is about leaves in the yard. Now this happens, we do lime applications in the wintertime, like November, December, and then even in January, let's say they hadn't cleaned up their leaves from the winter, and I'm out spraying a pre-emergent with the leaves. So what about the leaves, Jason? You sprayed my yard and it's got leaves all over the yard. I don't think it worked. What I've come to realize in spraying yards for people is the herbicides are very, very effective. Whether it rains, whether it's less than ideal conditions, sometimes you're too early, sometimes you're too late. I mean, it's still, they're just very good at what they're designed to do. So you think about leaves, for instance, you spray a liquid pre-emergent all over the leaves. To me, it's going to have a whole lot of leaves to keep the pre-emergent from eventually getting down to the soil, which is where it's designed to do. I mean, even if there was 6 inches of leaves on the ground and you spray that pre-emergent and it rains, it's gonna wash down to the soil eventually. I mean, I just think that's where it goes, and that's where it's designed to go, whether you have leaves or where you don't have leaves. Now, I mean, I guess if you had 3 feet of leaves on the lawn just piled up, which would be a very unusual situation, then it's possible that you're not going to get a nice even coverage, because it may wash off the leaves and go in some different patterns and things. But in general, the leaves are not nearly as big a concern in my mind as they are maybe in the customer's mind. And I try to comfort them in that, but also the way I was taught is, you think about the grass. What does grass have? Well, grass has leaves. You know, there's thousands of leaves in my yard. The grass has leaves, you know, and I need the pre-emergent to get past those leaves into the soil. So like, we can't get rid of all the grass leaves, you know, so the actual tree leaves are not as big a deal either. So you got to be careful how you word that so you don't sound condescending to the customer, but just understand leaves are not probably as big as a deal as some customers might make them out to be. Next topic that comes up a lot of times is about mowing the grass. This is number 5. So this would be like, hey, do I need to mow the grass before you come? Or hey, you sprayed it. When can I mow the grass after you come? Again, it's going to depend on what you're spraying. If I just went out there and fertilized the yard and didn't do any kind of weed killer application, typically if I fertilize, I'll say, hey, I'm going to fertilize, but I'm also going to spot treat the weeds. So if you don't mind, give it, you know, at least a few hours for the spot treatment to work on your nutsedge and things of that nature. So I'll say like later on this evening is fine, or definitely by tomorrow is totally fine. A lot of times they'll say something like, good, I didn't want to mow the grass anyway, I'll just wait till tomorrow. So it just depends on the situation, but sometimes it can be a little tricky if you're dealing with, like me, a weed control fertilization guy, and then the mowing companies are coming through mowing. And what I don't want to happen usually is for me to spray the yard and literally them to pull it right behind me and mow the grass, because I do want that post-emergent to have some time to work. Even in that situation, I think it's going to work way better than the customer might realize, but it's just a bad perception. Now, if they mow the grass before I spray, that's fine. The only time that's tricky about that is trying to spot treat weeds like nutsedge. It can be hard to see nutsedge when the grass has been mowed. Wait 2 days later, it's popped back up. It's easy to see where I can spray the weeds. If I'm just putting out fertilizer, you have people and they say, well, what if I come along and I bag the clippings? I'm sucking up the fertilizer. I'm not saying you're not sucking up any of the fertilizer, but it's probably such a minute amount. So you can encourage them to mulch. You can say mulching's fine. If you're going to bag, maybe you want to wait till after it rains. Now in my mind, if they bagged it right away, probably sucking up so little of the fertilizer, I don't think it's going to make any real difference. But again, to try to put the customer at ease, and because they're asking the question, it's obviously something that's on their mind, you say, maybe you should wait until after it rains if you want to bag the lawn. Again, I don't know that really helps, but in my mind it doesn't help a whole lot, but it can help put the customer at ease. I would be fine if they bagged it right away, because I think they're sucking up such little amount of fertilizer. The 6th thing I get asked is when the customer comes out and they want to know, can they do some extra stuff on top of what you're doing? Like, hey, Jason, you're spraying fertilizer Or, hey Jason, you're spraying the weeds and you fertilize. I got a little fertilizer over here in the garage I've been wanting to use. Would it be okay for me to do that? Or I got some weed killer stuff I bought last year I need to get rid of. I'm thinking about putting that out on my yard. In those situations, I get real uncomfortable with that because I don't want to be blamed for anything the homeowner did. And I usually will have a conversation that goes like this. I'll say, I understand that you bought some stuff last year and I understand you want to fertilize. I tell you, for my standpoint, I would prefer that if you hire me just to let me do everything, because I know exactly how much fertilizer I'm trying to put on the yard, and I don't know exactly what you're doing to the yard, and I know the weed control product. But if they're insistent, I might ask them, hey, would you just show me the fertilizer that you're wanting to put out, and I can go look at it and see and be like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I mean, if you want to put it out, it's fine. I don't know that it's necessary. But what I don't want to do is the customer to be taking my spot. If I'm doing 7 applications a year and they say, well, I'm going to do 2 of them myself and you do the other 5. I don't want that. And you think about, why would you not want that, Jason? Well, it costs yourself money a little bit. Well, yeah, that's true. But I don't want the customer's expectations being the same when they're doing some of the work. And then now we have a problem and they want to blame me when it may be something like, well, if I'd have been here those 2 extra times this year, I could have probably taken care of that problem. So I don't want the same expectations when I'm not in full control of the lawn. Another thing is, I don't want the customer doing something they don't know what they're doing, and a lot of times it's just completely unnecessary. If I spray a pre-emergent, then that's great. I don't need them coming right behind me and doing it again. Too much is not helpful for the lawn. So I know how to read the label. I can follow the label. I can put the right amount out for your grass, and we're good to go. Like, I don't need you coming behind me. So I think you gotta be real careful in letting the customer be your tag team partner when it comes to lawn care. Now, I want the customer participating. I said, how about this? You let me do the weed control and fertilization. I want you to be the mowing guy, okay? You just mow that grass once a week at this height and watering it once a week. And if you'll do that part and let me do the other part, I think we're gonna have a nice looking lawn. The 7th question I get asked, sometimes a customer will come out after I sprayed the yard or fertilized the yard, and they'll come out and say, hey, Jason, is there anything else I need to do? Is there anything I need to know what I can do? Well, in that situation, I actually like that question. None of these really bother me. But if they ask me that, I'm like, this is good. This is the kind of customer that I want, because he's willing to do what he needs to do to help the lawn look good, but he's not trying to do so in a way that like oversteps my role as the professional in this relationship. He's doing it in a way to say, literally asking, like, is there anything else I can do to help? And I would go back to a similar answer I gave before, like, yeah, I mean, it would be helpful to mow weekly instead of bi-weekly if they're doing that, it's not mowing enough. Or let's just say, I had a customer I remember a few years ago, to give you an example. He had a centipede yard. It was like 3.5, 4 inches tall. And it was struggling the way it was. There was some weeds and stuff. And I was like, centipede really would probably do a lot better if you could mow it short. Now, you're saying, you're going to mow it short, it may scalp it a little bit to start with. It may take a little while to get it down to where you want to get it. But whether you want to do it now or if you want to wait until the fall and mow it shorter, or in the early spring, whatever, get it back down to a manageable height. And if you can mow it regularly at that lower height, I think your centipede turf will actually be healthier. So if somebody's willing to listen to you, to give them some advice, and I give advice all the time on the irrigation system, like, listen, you're watering your grass every single day. Or I'll ask them, how often do you water your grass? It's 95 degrees and I walked in your backyard. I hadn't rained in 3 weeks and my feet are squishing in the backyard. And oh yeah, you got fungus and nutsedge and all the rest. And you can just encourage them, how about you let me adjust your sprinkler for you? Let's cut it back to 1 day a week. Like, oh, 1 day, I was like, hey, what about 2? We'll do 2, but like more than 2, I just don't understand it. A lot of times I think it causes more problems than it does benefit the lawn. These are the questions I get asked. Let me hear from you. If you got more that I left out, please fill in those. If you want to get a weed control and fertilization like me, a lot of people at the beginning of the year started taking advantage of the Weed Control and Fertilization Academy. There's also pricing charts. All these resources are over at lawncarelife.com. That's also where you'll find the link for the 2024 Lawn Care Life Conference. Excited about that. Got Alan Hain, Lawn Care Nut, Naylor Talferro, John Pajak, Paul Jameson, Jeremiah Jennings, Brittany and Caleb Allman, Jeremy Vess as speakers, myself. So we're planning to have a good time in Springville, Alabama, which is near Birmingham. Hope a lot of you can make it and use that discount code 2024 to save you 10% when you register. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.